My name is Brad. My wife Rebekah. We're super excited to be here this morning. I grew up in New York. Anyone from the north? Two. Okay, so I'm gonna have to rework a few things in my message. No, I grew up in New York, on Long Island more specifically, because. Oh, wow! This is what town? Brooklyn. Okay, Smithtown. So I'm not like a New Yorker. Yeah. See, and that's what I tell people that live upstate. I'm like, yeah, that's a whole nother country. I grew up in New York. Rebekah grew up she was born on the campus of U of M. Any Wolverines fans? Right. Okay, and then she mainly grew up, though, in California, Bakersfield, California, and we met in Minnesota. Right. Well, you have to meet in the middle somewhere. And we went to school at North Central University. It's freezing there, so we spent a lot of time getting to know each other. What? Coffee, conversations. I'm going to get in trouble for that later. She's probably watching. So we met in Minnesota, and the way this happened was I had a all-boy worship band, and that was not okay by a lot of the girls at the school. That how come there's no girls in your team or whatever? So we're like, okay, we need to find a girl. And we were having lunch in the cafeteria one day, and we found a song that was going to be a great song for a girl to sing. And we're like, well, who should we have? And Rebekah walks by the table, and the guitar player's like, hey, how about Rebekah? Like, do you want to sing this song with us? Sure, okay, 10 o'clock is rehearsal. All right, so we had rehearsal, we led at chapel, we did a couple other events. I was the lead singer, I got the girl. That's how it went. We got to know each other really over watching Gilmore Girls for many study sessions. And and that's how we met. She was a year ahead of me, so she graduated. We got engaged that summer, and then we started learning how to be a New Yorker and a Californian, getting married, and all the pieces that are involved in that, and fun family dynamics. And I come from New York, where it's like, okay, my sister's getting married in February 2020. She got engaged this summer. That's how we plan things in New York. It takes a long time, but we know when it's going to happen really far in advance. That wasn't for us. We got engaged and got married within a year, and everything was moving really fast. And then I graduated, we got married, and we moved to Indiana. Is anyone from Indiana? Oh, okay. Sorry. We weren't a fan. I was a New Yorker in the Midwest, really struggling. But we were right by Notre Dame, which didn't help my wife either, because Notre Dame and Michigan are like big rivals, right? Is that correct? Yes. Point to my nephew over there. He knows all about the things that I don't with sports. So we were there for 2 years, and have you ever been in a situation where you're like, man, this is what God is doing. He is opening the doors. We're going to run for it. All this is laid out. And then you get to that place, and it's exactly not what you were thinking? Am I the only one? Okay. That was our life. We got there. We were promised, you can build a recording studio. You can record records every year for the church and one for yourself. You can travel like quarter of the year, all these things. And we got there, and the church, within a month and a half, split. And there were a lot of dynamics in that situation that we were just not aware of. We had no idea what we were walking into, and slowly things became apparent. So we stayed there for 2 years and 2 months. And in that time frame, it wasn't easy. We got to know each other really well, but it was also hard on our lives in our first year of marriage, as we're getting to know each other, and we're also walking through a very challenging situation. It came to about a year and a half into the situation, and the pastor said, hey, when we go into the new year, I just want to let you know you're going to have to take a 10% pay cut or leave. Oh, okay. I guess we'll take the 10% pay cut for now. And we just began to pray. God, what do you want us to do? I was there as the worship pastor, and at that point, I was worship pastor, youth pastor, whatever else. Didn't matter. I was doing it all, and that was fine. We were happy to serve until God said different. So we took 5 months, and we prayed and prayed and prayed, and just said, God, what do you want? We had a large event that we hosted at the church, and I came home one night, and I was like, God, what are we doing? What do you want? And I just lay there, and I felt God say, you can do all the things I've called you to do, or you can do music. I was like, oh, thank you. And I called my dad the next morning, and my dad's been a pastor for 35 years now up on Long Island, and I told him what happened. He said, yeah, I've known for about a month. Thanks, Dad. He's like, well, you needed to hear it yourself. You needed to figure this out. I'm like, all right. So, music pastor at a church. It's kind of my first real experience, learned a lot. And what do I do next? Well, in my mind, that means I'm going to another church. So it was one of those moments where I think God started shifting in our lives and started doing things that kind of got us out of a place of comfort, not to get into another place of comfort, but to show us something else he was working on behind the scenes. And sometimes that's not easy, and it can be painful, but it's way better than whatever you think you should be getting. So we started that journey. Within a week, I had 3 contacts that I hadn't put my emails out. I hadn't sent anything, no calls. We went to a church in California in the middle of a vineyard in Napa Valley. Obviously, that's where we should go, right? Nope, didn't feel right. So came back. Then we talked with another church for a while, and that just kind of dissipated. And there was this church in Pennsylvania, Glad Tidings, and they had us come in. We had a great weekend. We sat down with the pastor. He said, you're our pick, so let's just start moving forward with this. Come back, and you guys can look for housing and all that stuff. Great, awesome. So that was in July. We went through August, and then right before we were supposed to go back there and pick out kind of where we were going to live, and at that point we had set an end date for our time in Indiana for the end of October. So we went. So we were ready to go, and we got a call from their kind of hiring committee, and they said, hey, we love you guys so much. And because of that, we don't know what we want, and we're not going to hire anybody right now. We're like, oh, okay, that hurts. So we cried, had our moment. I'm like, all right, God, what are we going to do? I don't know what we're going to do. Well, the only thing we knew what to do is we had songs that we had written, we had some recording equipment, and we had Google. So we recorded these songs. We had a buddy come down from college, record some acoustic songs with us. And then I mixed it and mastered it myself, and we started going on Google and emailing and basically grabbing emails from churches. So we would, type in Athens, Georgia, and we would look for all the churches, and we'd grab some emails of the pastor and the youth pastor and the music pastor, and then we'd write them a nice email that says, hi, we're husband and wife worship leaders, Brad and Rebekah. We're going to be in your area, if you book us, this weekend. And lo and behold, they booked us. I mean, we sent hundreds and hundreds of emails those first few weeks, and we filled up 4 weeks on a calendar. And then we filled up another 4 weeks, and then we filled up another 4 weeks. And I'll never forget, on Halloween weekend 2008, we had our first booking. We flew to Seattle, which was crazy. We had moved with my in-laws in D.C., and we flew to Seattle, and the pastor picked us up with a Don King wig on. And I was like, here we go, God. And we have been on the road since, traveling and doing music, and then just God began to open more and more doors as we did that. In our first year on the road, we had 4 weekends off. Our second year on the road, we had 2 weekends off. And then we went 3 years without a weekend off, and then some wise counsel said, take a weekend off. And we did. But all along in that, we could see what God was doing a little after. Sometimes we have to walk through the process and understand what it means to trust him. And I'll never forget our first year, we were heading down to Florida, and we had like literally 4 weekends booked, and then that was it. And I was just frustrated as anything. I was like, we're doing this thing, like, God, could you just take care of it? And my wife, always good, wise counsel. We always encourage people to trust, right? Yes. Okay. All right. Hey, there's a church that wants to book us for 4 weekends in a row in my email. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna stop worrying. Now, we can say that, but how many of us continue to worry? Yes? Yeah, okay. And that kind of became just our life, trusting in what we couldn't fully see, but knowing that God was working behind the scenes. And that's not easy. It's not easy at all, but it is so rewarding when we can stop and take our attention off of whatever we're trying to fix and allow God to put his hand into it. One of my favorite stories, I can't remember what year this was, but we had just had a couple really good events in a row, and since we were married until this point, so this was probably like at least 4 years into our marriage, if not 5, my wife had said, I'd really like to get pillows on our bed. And I thought we had 2 pillows on the bed. I don't understand. You're a double pillow sleeper. Got it. Okay, we'll get 2 more. And finally it started clicking, these are pillows that we don't put our heads on or cuddle with or sleep with. Okay. So we were living in D.C. Has anyone ever been to D.C., driven around D.C.? It's super fun. Hey, listen, I grew up in New York. It's piece of cake. So we're in D.C., and we are going down from where we live down to IKEA because that's where you get affordable pillows. And we were driving down there, and there's one of, those, every road has one of these weird left exits. Like everything's on the right, and then all of a sudden it's the left exit, and the person over here doesn't realize that it's a left exit, and he decides he's going to take the left exit. So we're driving down. We hit in the back of him. Our car isn't totaled, but it's not like drivable to Minnesota, which is where we're supposed to go in 2 days. And I'm like, so we get into the accident, we get all our information, and we go down to IKEA because we did say we were going to get pillows. So we got pillows. Come back to the house, and I think this is one of the clearest memories that I can remember that I actually said, I'm not going to do anything. Like, I know my nature is to try and fix this, make calls, see what we can do, rearrange stuff. I'm just going to trust God to take care of this. And I went to bed. I woke up the next morning, and there was an email from a youth pastor in the area, and he said, hey, our band backed out of this last-minute event. It's on Tuesday in like 5 days. Would you be able to do it? And I'm like, well, the only way we'd be able to do it, because we're supposed to be in Minnesota, is if we flew our band in last minute. We'd have to fly back and forth to Minnesota, and here's the ridiculous cost of this. And just kind of sent the email. And then I found out we had to go back to IKEA because we didn't get the right pillows. So back to IKEA we go. Go to IKEA. We're standing in the pillow aisle. We're deciding on shapes and sizes and patterns and colors and whatnot. And I get an email, and it says, great, book it. We'll send you the check. And I start laughing because I'm so overcome with joy, and Rebekah starts crying, and we're looking at pillows, and people think we got problems. But we had no problems. God was just good. So we flew to Minnesota, had a great time at that church, came back, and had a great time at that event. And it seems like a silly thing, but for us, it spoke volumes that God saw such a little thing that we could have rented a car maybe or figured something out, but instead of just like repairing the car or letting us borrow another car, like he booked another event for us, which also provided financially for us and took care of us even further. And I love the way that God thinks, because he thinks unlike us. He's thinking however many steps ahead, better. And I can tell you time and time again in our lives, that's been our story. That's been our journey, and I love it. There was a time a few years ago, we sell these Watoto paper bead necklaces, and for us, that's a big deal. It's a huge thing to an honor to bring them and to sell them and to pour into the ministry we're doing there. And we were doing a trip to Uganda, and we had taken our Christmas tour and kind of divvied it out. Like there were 6 events. If we sell X amount at each event, we can pay for the 4 flights that we needed to go. That's my New Yorker mind, just like dotting the lines and everything. So we're about to go into the event, into our events there, and I get a call from the pastor. He says, hey, we're doing this really awesome missions thing this next Sunday when you're with us, so you can't talk about Watoto, you can't sell anything. And this was a really big church, and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, this is a plan I have. So I went to church that night, and I'm sitting there with our producer, and pastor gets up, and or actually the person doing the offering gets up, and she shares the story about how she loaned money to somebody, and at the end of it, she ended up she was so frustrated, but she felt God say, just give it to them, and don't worry about it. And as soon as that happened, I felt God just say, just give it to them. Give them the money that you would raise for Watoto for their thing. I'm like, man. And our producer's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you later. And then, so in my mind, I'm like, all right, we could split it. Like, that'd be good, right? Like, win-win. And then we go into the sermon. The pastor starts talking about Abraham. And Abraham taking his son Isaac all the way up to the mountain. And he's like, he didn't just take him there and wait. He didn't just put the sticks on the altar and wait. He didn't just bind Isaac and wait. He lifted the knife. He went 100%. As soon as he said 100%, I'm like, oh, man. You okay? Yeah. And I knew right then and there. That's what we were supposed to do. And immediately after that, there's not many moments in my life I can really say I felt God speak to me personally. But this is one of those moments I felt him say, do you not trust me to replenish and then some? Well, yes, I do. And we watched over the next few weeks how the event before, what we would have thought would have come in doubled. And then we were able to 100% bless that church with what we gave them. And then another event just wrote us a check. Said, here you go. We just love what you're doing. Okay? So replenish and then some. And then at the end of it all, we do this final Christmas tour event, and the pastor walks out and says, hey, we want to bless you guys. We know what you're doing. And he wrote us a check for the entirety of the trip that we had. I was like, okay, I'm just going to back off God and just trust. This is working way better than what I think is going to happen. Here's the thing. It's not always a check at the end of, it's not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow every time. But there's something that God's doing. Sometimes it happens within days. Sometimes it happens within months. Sometimes it takes years. And you don't understand. What I do know is what it says in Lamentations. How many of you are currently doing a Bible study in Lamentations? No? Okay. You should. Lamentations 3:1-6 starts this way. It says, I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again. Feeling good? But here we go. Lamentations 3:19. So he goes through all of these negative things again and again. Everything is just, woe is me. This has happened. Calamity. But then Lamentations 3:19 says, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet, this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait. for him. We have waited for many things in our life. I'm sure there's things that you're still waiting on that don't make sense. But I know, because I can list all the things right now that I'm like, this needs to be changed, this needs to be fixed. Wow, we got to take care of that. God, what's going on? He knows what's going on. He's working. And because I can look back and see God's faithfulness in the pillow story, or what he did with the Watoto stuff that wasn't even financially for us, I can trust that he'll be faithful again. But I would have never planned those like that. Mine would have been way more simple. But man, those bring way more glory to the magnificence that God can bring into our lives as we wait on him versus try to fix it ourselves. If there's anything this morning that I can encourage you with, it's to trust. When it seems like you really should be trying to fix it, to trust. Because I promise you, God is working, but we just have to wait sometimes to see it. This past year, we had been working on a record for 4 years. It was a very long process. It was so much fun, so many amazing people we got to work with, to write with. And the day before it was available for pre-release, we sat in an emergency room and found out that my wife, Rebekah, had cancer. And it changed everything. It didn't change the fact that we still went ahead and released a record that God had put in our hands. It just changed the story a little bit. And we sat there as we overcrowded emergency room, and the doctor was telling us all these things, that it was inoperable and everything. And we're just like, God, what's going on? And I love that in the middle of that, obviously there was the initial shock, and we had that. But that night in the hospital room, Rebekah says, man, it's just like the devil. Like we're supposed to be doing something great tomorrow, but he just wants to take us out. So we trusted in what God would do. Rebekah had a liposarcoma tumor. It was 10 pounds by 15 inches, and it was massive, and it required very specific care. We needed to go to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, which our insurance said, not a chance. And we went anyway. We got a consultation, referral, all that stuff. We went through the appeal process 3 times. And after that, I remember sitting, it was about 6 weeks after, I was sitting in a coffee shop. We were supposed to be waiting for the final approval. And this was kind of like the no-brainer, like doctor to doctor, peer-to-peer conversation. This is going to happen, no big deal. This is just formality. And I'm just sitting there, and I felt God say, do you not trust me to replenish? And then I'm like, oh no, not again. And I was just writing some things down that I felt he was sharing with me. And he said, I am the one that holds the storehouse. Just wait and see what I will do. I'm like, all right. Phone rings, pick it up. Hey, they denied it. You need to come home. We need to figure this out. Okay? So I went home. And we did, a couple things that we should initially, insurance commissioner, all that stuff. But we just kind of waited. We're like, I just feel like God is doing something here. Next morning, got a call super early in the morning from a patient advocate. And she said, hey, I'm Rhonda. I'm here to kind of help you guys. I know you got denied a 3rd time. Now it's time to figure out how we can get the care that Rebekah needs. I set you up with an appointment with this doctor. We're like, Googling him right away. Who is this guy? No one's talked about him in Arizona. And we're like, you kind of get that like, I don't know about this. We went to the appointment. He walks in. He goes, oh, you're trying to go to MD Anderson? All right, cool. He's like, well, I studied at so-and-so, the campus next door, and did his residency at MD Anderson. And he said, well, at the end of the day, that's where you're going to be for surgery, so who do I need to call? He called 5 minutes later, 100% approval, and $10,000 for travel. and then some. And we went. I'm going to invite Rebekah out here in the band just to kind of share just how God continued to move in that and take care of us.
Say it again. Hi. So as we were going through this process, as you can imagine, there were a full gamut of emotions and prayer in my heart, and some moments where, you don't feel like you can pray, like you're afraid to pray because you don't want, I don't know, it's hard to explain if you haven't been there. But all you can do is just say, God, help me. But one of the things I've started to pray through this process was that God would just heal me, just instantaneously heal me, and that seems like an awesome plan, right? Bring awesome, amazing glory to his name, and I would be healthy. Sounded awesome to me. One of the weird things that I said when I prayed, I said, God, would you just cause this tumor to shrivel up and fall out of my body? And scientifically, I don't even know how that would have happened, but those were the words that I used when I prayed for God to heal me. And so we first got the news in January, and then the insurance thing happened, I think, in March, and the surgery happened in April. And April came, and there was no healing. The tumor was still there. And as I'm being rolled back into the operating room, I'm thinking, God, you can still do it. Then after 3.5 hours of what was supposed to be a 6 to 8 hour operation, the surgeon came out to Brad and my family and said, she's fine. The operation is over. We got her opened up, and the tumor practically fell out of her body. Now, that wasn't exactly my prayer. That wasn't my plan, right? I didn't want to go into surgery. I wanted it to poof and disappear, right? I thought that would be awesome. And no matter what the outcome would have been, God was sending me a message. He was telling me that he heard me, that he was with me, that he had been listening to me, and that he loved me. And that surgeon didn't have to use those words. She could have used a different phrase to say that it came out of my body. But God knew that I needed to hear those words. And how powerful and how amazing to know that all through that time when God wasn't answering my prayer and it wasn't turning out the way that I wanted, that he said, oh, but just look back and know that I was listening to you and I heard you, and my plan is sovereign. My plan really is the super awesome one, just so you know. But I'm not going to leave you through any of it. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to provide for you. Most importantly, I've made a provision for your salvation, for your eternity, that no matter what happens on this earth, the ultimate provision was made through Jesus Christ and our salvation. Amen.